Daphne Rose's arrival in Los Angeles detonated like a flash of lightning across Carter Walton's carefully constructed world, shattering every notion he had of a smooth path to the altar. Only hours earlier, the handsome Forrester executive had been meticulously reviewing seating charts and floral arrangements, rehearsing his vows to Hope Logan down to the last syllable, convinced that his future lay in her steady hands. Yet the moment Daphne emerged from the sleek black sedan in front of Spencer Publications, her silhouette lithe in a trench coat that hinted at both elegance and resolve, every breath in the courtyard seemed to catch in Carter's throat. He paused mid-stride, ribbon and program in hand, as memories unfurled before him. The first time Daphne had slipped into his office late at night with a coffee and a conspiratorial grin, the way her laughter had once warmed his soul, the countless afternoons they'd spent dreaming up a life beyond the boardroom. Now, across a few yards of pavement, she stood as though summoned by some unseen force, her pale eyes fixed on him with an intensity that spoke louder than any plea. Hope's voice reached him then, soft, incredulous, asking who the newcomer was, and for the first time, Carter realized he stood at the precipice of impossible choices. Hope, radiant in ivory silk, her hair braided with pearls, approached with cautious hope in her gaze, unaware that the foundations of her happiness trembled. Daphne took a step forward, chin lifted with quiet determination, and Hope faltered, the tiny card in her hand trembling like a leaf in a storm. Carter closed the distance to shield Hope, but he could no more block Daphne's impact than he could unring the bell of the past. The three of them formed an uneasy triangle beneath the California sun, Carter caught in the eye of an emotional tempest. Daphne's voice, low and urgent, cut through the hush. "I came back for you, Carter." The words hung in the air, weighted with all the confessions left unsaid. Hope's cheeks flushed with confusion and hurt, while Carter's jaw tightened as he grappled with the tidal wave of guilt and longing. The weeks that followed became a whirlwind of clandestine meetings and whispered confrontations. Daphne, no longer content to exist only in Carter's memories, wove herself into his days with relentless purpose. A chance encounter at Forrester Creations' glass-walled coffee bar, where her hand brushed his shoulder under the guise of casual conversation. An unexpected invitation to a gala for the fragrance launch he and Hope had co-hosted, where she wore an emerald gown that made Carter see color for the first time since his engagement, and a midnight phone call filled with raw emotion as she confessed that Paris had failed to soothe the ache of being torn from him. Each moment sent Carter's world spinning, forcing him to confront the truth he'd buried beneath duty and decency, that his heart still beat strongest for Daphne. Yet every time he reached for her, the memory of Hope's trusting smile and unwavering faith held him back, a solemn reminder that promises had already been made. Hope, too, was not a passive player in this escalating drama. Ever perceptive, she sensed the nuances beneath Daphne's strategic charm, the way Daphne's fingers lingered on Carter's arm, the subtle tilt of her head when she spoke of shared dreams, the glimmer in her eyes when Carter's laughter finally returned. Determined to protect the love she and Carter had nurtured through late-night strategy sessions and stolen kisses in empty corridors, Hope confronted him in the privacy of their softly lit living room. The moment Carter confessed his faltering resolve, her composure cracked, revealing the fierce vulnerability that lay beneath her composed exterior. She implored him to remember the stability and respect they offered each other, to recall the nights she had nursed him through setbacks and celebrated his triumphs, to recognize that love was more than passion, it was choice and commitment in the face of temptation. Yet as she spoke, he saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, as though the steady ground they'd built their future upon was eroding faster than she could contain. Meanwhile, Daphne refused to relinquish her quest, escalating her campaign to sway Carter's heart. She arrived unannounced at his family home, delivering a hand-bound scrapbook filled with Polaroids of a time when they had been young dreamers plotting their ascent in the fashion world. She orchestrated a private viewing of a collection she'd designed, dedicating each dress to a memory they'd shared, unveiling them in a hushed atelier lit only by candles. Romantic tributes labeled First Laughter, Midnight Secrets, Future Promises. With each gown, Carter felt the walls he'd erected crumble further, as if every stitch whispered her enduring devotion. In one particularly poignant moment, Daphne revealed a slender gold locket she had carried across the ocean, a gift fashioned in Paris, inscribed with the motto, "A shifted life seldom settles," a testament to her belief that fate had not abandoned their connection. Carter's fingers trembled as he opened the locket to find two photographs, one of them as they'd been, carefree and full of hopes, and another blank, awaiting the next chapter of their story. He looked up, tears brimming, only to be met by Daphne's unwavering gaze and the crushing weight of his own indecision. Hope, sensing the reckoning approaching, refused to cede ground. She enlisted the help of Haley and Liam Spencer, her closest allies, in mounting a counteroffensive to remind Carter of the life he truly valued. In a sunlit veranda overlooking the Pacific, Hope arranged a surprise celebration of their love, a video montage featuring heartfelt messages from friends and family, snapshots of milestones they'd shared, and a custom song recorded by a jazz quartet streaming live. As the music swelled and images flickered across the screen, first date jitters, victory embraces, late-night counsel. Carter felt his heart tug in conflicting directions. When Hope stepped forward, her hand outstretched with a single red rose and a vow to stand by him through every storm, he breathed in the scent of her devotion, yet could not quell the echo of Daphne's whispered plea resonating in his mind. Caught between the two women, Carter's nights grew restless, plagued by dreams in which Daphne and Hope merged into a single soul, demanding his allegiance. By candlelight, he penned letters neither would read, trying to sort truth from obligation, passion from prudence. He found himself wandering the empty halls of Forrester Creations at dawn, staring at his reflection in glass panels, searching for the man whose certainty had once carried him to the brink of forever with Hope. Instead, he saw a fractured image, eyes haunted by possibility, lips parted as if to plead, shoulders burdened by the weight of impossible choices. As the wedding day drew perilously close, tension crackled through every encounter. Daphne planned a final, unignorable gesture. She secured a private rooftop soiree under a canopy of fairy lights and fireflies, inviting Carter to meet her one last time before he walked down the aisle. There, with the city lights shimmering beneath them, she laid bare her soul, confessing that every sunrise in Paris had been a betrayal of her own heart, admitting that the prospect of his union with Hope had become a torment she could not endure, and professing that she would fight for their love until her last breath. Her words, heavy with passion and vulnerability, dripped like honey into Carter's ears, reigniting the spark he thought extinguished. Behind her, the skyline stood silent witness to a plea that eclipsed every vow he had prepared to utter to Hope. Meanwhile, Hope received a message from Carter, an invitation to meet him where Daphne had stood hours before. With trembling resolve, she arrived at the rooftop, clutching the handwritten vows she had rehearsed 1,000 times. The scene that greeted her was a tableau of heartache. Carter, head bowed, Daphne's folded silhouette by his side, their shoulders nearly touching as though fate had drawn them together one last time. Hope's breath caught. Tears glimmered against her lashes as she stepped forward into the glow of lanterns and starlight. The three formed a crucible of emotion, each bearing wounds of love and betrayal, each desperate for a future that now seemed frayed beyond repair. No words had yet passed between them, yet the hush spoke volumes of promises broken and sanctity challenged, of passion unquenched and loyalty tested. In that suspended instant, Carter lifted his head, eyes shimmering with unshed tears and indecipherable longing. He held out his hand first to Daphne, then to Hope, as though time itself had fractured and each shard offered a different destiny. The flutter of his coat, the quickened pulse in his throat, the hush of the night, all conspired to freeze reality in a single breath before the storm. Would he stand by Hope, the steadfast beacon who had built their love on trust and respect? Or would he choose Daphne, the fierce flame who had ignited his soul with dreams too bright to ignore? As the moon traced its path across the sky, the answer rested on his trembling lips, poised to break the silence and seal the fate of three hearts entwined in a drama more compelling than any fashion show could ever portray. The final act loomed, and in that electric space between promise and betrayal, Carter Walton faced the greatest decision of his life. One that would redefine destiny for him, for Hope, and for Daphne Rose forever. As the moon slipped behind a bank of gathering clouds, casting the sprawling Los Angeles skyline into a cloak of muted silver, Daphne Rose paced the length of her sleek penthouse loft, every exquisite detail around her. From the minimalist sculpture lighting her path to the glass walls framing the city lights, suddenly feeling like a cage built of her own making. She had arrived only days ago with a singular purpose: to reclaim Carter Walton's heart. Yet, in the intervening hours, while Carter struggled with the weight of divided loyalties, she had heard a rumor whispered by a back-channel source, a breathless, half-believed word that solidified into chilling certainty the moment a late-night text lit her phone. Hope Logan was pregnant with Carter's child. The news struck Daphne like a physical blow. The thought of an innocent life blossoming as a living bond between Carter and Hope was an affront she could not abide, for a baby would tie Carter to Hope in ways no argument, no confession of past love, no stolen kiss could sever. Fury, cold and resolute, ignited in her chest. If she could not win Carter's heart, she would destroy the very root of his obligation to another. She would not be the other woman overshadowed by motherhood. She would be the savior who struck down that possibility before it could ever flourish. There was no room for doubt, no time for hesitation. Over the next 24 hours, Daphne moved with ruthless precision, securing a vial of untraceable sedative, one that, in sufficient dose, could induce miscarriage without leaving telltale evidence. She masked her inquiries with feigned concern for Hope's well-being, probing pharmacy backdoors, leveraging an old acquaintance's medical credentials to obtain the drug under the guise of a rare vitamin supplement. Every step felt simultaneously transgressive and necessary, a dark affirmation that her love for Carter justified even the most dangerous lengths. She rehearsed her plan in the mirror, watching the hard line of her jaw soften only when her gaze flicked to the small, ornate photo frame on her dressing table, a snapshot of her and Carter on a long-ago afternoon, sunlit and untethered by fear. That memory, she reminded herself, was the template of the future she would reclaim, a future unencumbered by new life that would anchor him to Hope forever. The stage for her decisive act was set at a joint celebration hosted by Forrester Creations and Spencer Publications, a lavish rooftop party thrown to commemorate the new fragrance launch and Carter's impending wedding. The night bloomed with laughter and champagne bubbles that caught the light like 1,000 dancing stars, but Daphne felt only the pulse of her plan as she slipped through the throng in a silken black gown that whispered across the marble floor. Carter, resplendent in his tuxedo, greeted guests with warm ease, his smile still haunted by the complexities of his heart. Hope, radiant in soft blue chiffon, moved among the crowd with gentle grace, her hand occasionally resting on her waist as though shielding the precious secret within. Each time Daphne saw that gesture, her heart quickened with both revulsion and resolve. She would rob Hope of that secret. She would unmake the promise of life that bound Carter to another. Timing was everything. Daphne carried a small crystal vial concealed in the pocket of her gown, the sedative's pale liquid ready for its moment. She watched Hope accept a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, her bright eyes reflecting both joy and the adrenaline of matrimonial anticipation. With a casual elegance born of practice, Daphne intercepted the waiter moments later under the pretense of adjusting his tray, guiding his hand to steady it as a loose strap of his vest threatened to uncover the truth. She murmured an apology, a soft breeze of apology that disguised the darker intention she had pressed into his palm, a second, identical flute filled with a clear liquid that, to every unknowing observer, was nothing more than the finest vintage. The waiter, accustomed to the pleasures of the elite, moved on obliviously, while Daphne slipped back into the crowd, heart pounding with adrenaline and dread. Within minutes, Hope raised her glass to Carter, their eyes meeting in a private halo of promise, and Daphne saw the flutter of new life flicker across Hope's skin, a soft glow that threatened to eclipse every vision Daphne held for her own future. She steadied her breathing as she approached, offering congratulations in a tone so warm that even Hope, buoyed by joy, did not suspect a thing. When the moment felt ripe, when Hope's laugh rang highest, when Carter's arm steadied her back as she leaned into his embrace, Daphne signaled the waiter for a refill, then, with the gentlest of touches, swapped the glasses in a motion untraceable in its grace. Hope raised the second flute without thought. Daphne's pulse thundered as the champagne traveled past Hope's lips, each swallow a step toward the calamity she had embraced. Moments later, a hush fell as Carter lifted his glass to propose a toast to unity and love eternal. Hope returned the toast with glowing eyes, speaking of the child they would soon welcome. Daphne watched Carter's face soften at Hope's words, the words that would soon be nothing more than a cruel echo in a heart that had suffered the greatest loss. A flicker of guilt, brief as lightning, struck Daphne as she witnessed the love she once shared with Carter reflected in the vulnerable hope in his eyes, but she blew it away with the force of her determination. This was not cruelty born of malice, it was war, a necessary battle to claim the destiny she believed was rightfully hers. As laughter and music swelled around them, Daphne melted into the shadows of the rooftop, her mission accomplished in a sip of poisoned champagne. Carter's voice rang clear in the night air, and Daphne felt tears sting her eyes at the knowledge that soon he would be free of any bond that pressed him toward another woman. Yet, even as she allowed herself a victorious smile, the cool Pacific breeze carried a question inward. What would she do when Hope's collapse shattered the evening's revelry, when suspicion turned to panic, when grief and accusation spread like wildfire? For in that moment of triumph, Daphne glimpsed the abyss of her own making, a future where Carter's freedom would be stained with the darkest of secrets, and Daphne herself would stand alone amid the ruins she had wrought. The die was cast. The fate of two women and the love of one man now hung in the balance, poised on the razor's edge of betrayal under the indifferent gaze of the stars.